It was 2007, a couple years after I had started my practice in 2004. My kids were 2 and 3. At the time then they were 7 and 8.
Okay.
And by this point, my marriage is falling, I'm having marriage issues because I'm working all the time and I'm hustling and I'm missing dinners. And it was not, I wasn't in a good place. And so I run into an old colleague of mine who used to be on the other side of cases from a prior job. And so I run into her at a restaurant and she says, "Oh, hey, I didn't realize you were doing real estate. I know a developer who's looking for a new attorney." And I was like, in my mind, a light bulb goes off like, oh my gosh, if I can get one developer to hire me, that would mean volume business, which means financial stability, which means more time with my kids.
Right.
So it's not even a question. In my mind, I'm like, I have to get this client.
Right.
I was so hungry for the client. So I go, within a day or two to go meet the developer, and I go into, it was North Miami Beach. So I go to this building, I walk into the conference room, and the developer himself, the money guy, the principal guy, was sitting in a separate office, but his 2 right-hand guys were sitting there to meet with me, his operations guys. And basically they said, "Rashmi, this is what we've been doing. We've been working with a big law firm, but we really just want to have one lawyer, work with somebody directly. So we'd like to work with you." So the first thing is that should have been a massive red flag, because why would they leave a big law firm that has more capacity, more experience, more education, more bandwidth, all of that, to come and work with me, who I've never worked with a developer before, right? So that should have been a massive red flag. And I was so blind to it because I just wanted this client so badly. And I was instead just really flattered and arrogant. And then they began to describe the transactions that they were doing. And they said, "Well, we've been doing these creative transactions. We've been giving buyers incentives to buy their units," because the seller had condo conversions, so units that he was selling. And so they said, "This is how we do it. It's through this one instrument. It's documented, and you'll send the money to our management company." So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of creative. So I walked into a side office and called my underwriting counsel for my underwriter. And I said, "I'm sitting with this developer. He's doing third-party disbursements on the HUD." Because in my mind, I was like, well, I'm doing a third-party disbursement to a management company. How would I structure the transaction? So they said, "Well, as long as you go do A, B, C, D, E, your files will be clean." Now, when I look back on that moment, I realize I left out a very important fact.
Yeah.
Which is that the buyer was getting a financial benefit through this rental guarantee, buyer incentive. And at the time, I guess I realized how I so immediately rationalized and justified what I was doing and assumed that that didn't matter. All that mattered was my escrows in and out. And as long as my escrow account indicated exactly what the settlement statement indicated, that's all I have to do. So within 2 weeks, I had my first closing request. I didn't do any due diligence. I didn't ask for help. By the way, I am surrounded by attorneys. There is any number of people, not just my parents, but my friends, my mentors, that I could have gone to say, "Hey, I'm working with this developer. He wants to do XYZ. What do you think?"
Well, this is something I picked up on in one of your articles that I read, and I think this is a really important point for anyone who is a solopreneur or by themselves. You mentioned when you're in a bigger office, when you're in Wall Street, you have people to bounce things off of. You go down a hall, ask this person, ask that person. When you're a solopreneur, you don't have that, right? So you may not be inclined to be able to ask someone that's an apple to apple scenario, "This is what I'm doing," and they have the expertise to answer it right away. You kind of have to, a little bit on your own, a little bit maybe you don't feel like, you don't want to show that you don't know what you're doing. I don't know. I'm just saying that it's a little bit of an emptier silo, right?
Well, I definitely think when you have your own business, whether it's solopreneur, or even an entrepreneur with more people maybe around you. In my case, I was a solopreneur, but I had 4 people that worked for me, but they were hourly employees. So technically I really was a solopreneur. And when you're operating that kind of silo, as you said, there is no checks and balances. There's nobody that contextually understands what I'm going through.
No.
To even ask for help or ask for them to review something. I think it's incumbent upon us as solopreneurs, though, to find mentors and build those relationships with people, both in and out of our workplaces, in our workplace situations, right? In my case as a solopreneur, I did have other friends and mentors that were attorneys in the real estate space that absolutely I could have gone to. And of course, afterwards, I've had many conversations with them and they wish that I would have gone to them and asked them for help or a second opinion. I also didn't want to ask for help because, again, right, that's a sign of weakness. And
I get it, right? And you were younger at the time too. Right? There's a lot of things you can look at.
And I was aggressive, and I was like, oh, I'm just a strategic, out of the box thinker. I'm doing things that are very creative.
Right,
Right. And so I just didn't ask the questions of others, of the developer. I just, in hindsight, I realized I was not asking the questions because I didn't want to hear the answers.
Yeah.
I just wanted to keep the client because that was giving me financial stability.
Fair enough. So you go through, you're working with this particular developer, and then at some point, did you return? Did your practice continue, or you stopped doing work with that person? Right? I guess it
15
ended.
months. I worked about 15 months with this developer. The units all sold, and then I stopped working with him. And I actually stopped doing transactional work altogether. I merged my practice with my father's, who was doing real estate litigation and like foreclosure type of work. And so I merged my practice with him, and then I just started growing our practice. I mean, I scaled our business 1,200% within like 2 years.
Amazing.
And I was doing a different type of growth of a business, but focused on litigation and other things.
So things are going well. You're living your life.